I'm Debbie Travis.
And I'm Tommy Smythe.
And this is Trust Me, I'm a Decorator. Hello, everybody. We have quite an unusual podcast today because it's coming to you from Tuscany, but so is Tommy. Hello, Tommy.
Hello from up the hill.
Up there. So Tommy is in our barn. And we also have our great friend and guest today, Jacky Brown. Hello, Jacky.
Hi, Debbie and Tommy.
And Jacky's downstairs.
So we're actually in the middle of a retreat. We have a girls' getaway on here in Tuscany. Tommy is working here. We're doing a Design Your Best Life week. Jacky is also working here for the Design Your Best Life, and she is our nutritional therapist. So we thought, while we have 18 women who have completely ignored all our advice and are drinking down by the pool, we will do a talk about something that's actually coming up all the time in the press at the moment, and I find actually fascinating, and a lot of the women here are asking questions about. So this is something called UPF. Tommy, do you know what UPF means, and keep it clean?
Yes, I do. That is something similar. It's a delivery service like FedEx, only they wear the cute little brown shorts. Yes?
Good try.
Okay, Jacky, explain what UPF is and why everybody's talking about it at the moment.
So it seems to be that everyone's very concerned about ultra-processed foods, and that's what UPF stands for. So one of the questions...
What is ultra...
ultra-processed food is anything that you would buy in a supermarket or a store that has ingredients that you would not find in your kitchen normally. So all sorts of things, stabilizers, modified starch, all the gums that they put into food, emulsifiers, and all these additives are in ultra-processed food. So, and this is what we want to try and eliminate from our diets, if we can.
Right. So I was actually intrigued by this because something happened to me a few weeks ago. And I asked Jacky about it, and she explained, and she's going to explain again in a minute. So basically, I have this lovely doggy called Billy, and every few days I boil an inexpensive chicken thigh or a bit of breast, and I boil it up, slice it, and over the next 24 hours, 48 hours maximum, I will put a little bit of that protein into his food. Right. I'll actually eat it myself. So a few weeks ago, we were driving from the UK to Italy, and I didn't have time to boil a chicken leg. So I ran down to the supermarket and I bought a little tray, like you do, with the same piece of chicken sliced up, in saran wrap, in wrap. First thing, it was 5 times the price of if I bought a chicken leg in the butcher's or in a supermarket, just a chicken leg, right? Mm-hmm. I could have bought a whole chicken for the price. And the second thing was the expiry date on this chicken was 5 weeks away. Now, I think most people, if they see a bit of sliced meat, they think it's the same as the sliced meat if you'd actually cooked the meat yourself, which I know I wouldn't give to my precious dog after 2 days, maybe 3 days it's kept in the fridge. So why, Jacky, is a piece of meat got a 5-week thing on it?
So I think they're called convenience foods, aren't they? So they're very convenient.
Yeah.
And when you want to grab something and run, and you haven't got time to prepare, that's when these foods can be useful. I'm not saying, and I guess we're not saying never have them, but have them rarely if you really need to. And as you so correctly said, you could have bought a couple of chicken thighs, or probably 2 chickens for what you paid for that sliced chicken.
And only boil it in water.
But they are full of, they're going to be preservatives in there, and all sorts of additives that we don't necessarily need. And there's a lot of research being carried out at the moment to see if these additives are affecting our health. And there's some evidence that they do. And we aren't eating food as close to nature as perhaps we should, or we have in the past.
A lot of it is very hidden, isn't it? I mean, because, for instance, a yogurt, people think yogurt, probiotic, it's really good for you. But here at the villa, We have yogurt from a sheep farm. So it's sheep yogurt, which basically tastes exactly the same. And on the label, on the back, it says ingredients and it says milk, sheep's milk, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
So the women are actually quite surprised, but it will not say that even on the healthiest looking yogurts in a supermarket, right?
No, and it's harder to find that kind of a food product in a place like, Los Angeles or New York City or Toronto, Canada, because in big cities, you don't necessarily have access to the farms.
I think you have to research the brands that are using just milk, and they are out there. They might be harder to find. But I think the confusing thing for people is you walk into a supermarket and you see all these, going, oh, really gut healthy yogurts, and it's got probiotics in. This is fantastic. And total, like what you call greenwash, making this look more attractive. And then you pick it up and you read the list of ingredients, and there's quite a lot of sugar in there, or flavoring sometimes, not fruit, modified starch to make it more gloopy. And you're not having just milk. And yogurt should be just milk.
And it should be gloopy, but naturally gloopy.
Well, if you've ever made yogurt, is gloopy a word?
I think it is. It is now.
Greek yogurt is deliciously gloopy and thick, and that's just milk.
Yeah.
And, it has the very good bacteria for your gut. A lot of yogurt, because of shelf life, has other stuff in it. And, we want to have the one that hasn't got any additives. And we want probiotics in it. We want the good, healthy stuff for our guts, or the probiotic goodness.
And when you're sitting, because Jacky's just done this fabulous talk for the last few hours with 18 women sitting there, and you get deeper and deeper into this, and you think at a certain age everybody knows all this stuff. There's so much information out there, but honestly, I have to drag these women away from Jacky, because there are so many questions about this, and we've discussed this kind of thing with Jacky before, but it also opens up so many stories. And Jacky was telling us a story about margarine that left people with their mouths open.
Don't say that. I eat so much margarine. Don't say that. Oh my God. I'm scared.
Okay, listen to where margarine came from.
Yeah, well, this is during the war. The original margarine. Margarine is made differently now from vegetable oils, but the original margarine was a byproduct of a type of coal. I Googled it. I fact checked it because I'd read it in a book, and I thought, God, can that really be true?
And the Gestapo were trying this out because, they were also working as scientists.
They were looking to make scientists, and they made this gloopy stuff, more gloop, but it was
bad gloop.
Made. It's a byproduct. They made it from a coal because they were trying to make a liquid fuel, and then they thought, well, we can turn this into margarine. The war, and there's not a lot of real butter around or things like that because of the war, and then they added a bit of food dye to it and turned it into margarine, but it's a byproduct of a type of coal.
Wow.
And margarine became like the hottest cool product in the 50s and 60s. I mean,
People put that on everything.
And then that led us to the invention of, those little packages, sweet and low, aspartame, of how the guy discovered that same thing, fuel, and he licked the beaker, right?
A byproduct of coal tar, and he was doing some experiments, and he thought, God, this tastes really sweet. And that's...
Why was he tasting the... he was looking for...
This is the big question. How did this happen?
Yeah, well, I think it was by mistake. He literally put his hand in his mouth doing all these tests. Probably you shouldn't do that as a scientist, but anyway. And he went, God, that's weird. And he went around tasting all the beakers and found out he'd invented sweet and low.
Yeah, tasting all the beakers.
Became a multi-millionaire from that.
Yeah, became a multimillionaire. But
of course.
Yeah. And again, those pink packages, I think it's become a habit over all the decades that people feel that when they didn't know all this stuff and they just automatically put it in their coffee. And yet next to them, like I said during this chat, well, a teaspoon of, if you really want to have sugar, a teaspoon of sugar is only 20 calories, but people will have a large chunk of cake, right? And then they'll put that sweet and low, that aspartame, into their coffee. Like, what's the point? You're eating the cake, which is sugar, and then you're putting a chemical, and it is still a chemical, isn't it? It's one of the worst foods ever, and probably one of the most processed things if we're just talking about UPF.
Yes, that is definitely a UPF. So,
yeah, and some UPFs might give you a UTI if used incorrectly.
well, I think the research is that they might definitely interfere with your gut microbiome. And, what is causing the chronic illness that is happening now? And is it because people are eating so much ultra-processed food? I think probably it must have something to do with it because it prolongs the shelf life. You're not eating food as close to nature as possible. And I think sometimes one of the best things, because people say, what's the healthiest thing you can do? What's the best thing you can do for your health? Learn to cook.
Yeah.
Learn to cook from scratch.
There's no substitute.
And bringing it back to what happens in Italy, our chef here, he knows where all the food comes from. It either comes from his garden or his friend's garden or his friend's farm. And the food is all prepared in the building. And he even doesn't pick his own herbs. He picks Debbie's herbs.
Yeah.
So they're fresh. She's not very happy about that. Not very happy about it. But
He uses so many herbs. And I'm like, Francesco, why do you use your own herbs? He's only half an hour away. And he said, because the minute you pick it, the nutrients in the herbs start to deplete. So for me to walk outside, so anybody can do that at home. If you've got a patio or you've got a covered area or a little place outside, have a pot.
Yeah.
Window ledge.
Or a window ledge, just herbs. We love growing them here because they're so easy. And we've got everything.
Because of all the great plant chemicals, it sort of contributes towards your 10 vegetables a day. Don't discount them because they all have different properties. So the more varied your herb intake is, the better it is for your health. So
I just have a question, Jacky, about I wonder when we look at food labels, and we usually kind of have a sense when we're looking at a package of food that's been ultra processed because they kind of look wrapped in plastic and, all those things. When we're looking at the list of ingredients, a lot of the ingredients in food can sound kind of sciencey. And how do you tell the difference between the sciencey sounding ingredient that could be biological and the sciencey sounding ingredient that could be chemical and bad?
Well, I think maybe you have to Google it because you're quite right. Some things like ascorbic acid is vitamin C, and that's often in things, so as a preservative. So you're right. It could be something else, and everything has a sciencey name. But I think really what we're looking for are emulsifiers, which it normally says it's an emulsifier or a modified starch or a preservative or a gum, because all these gums, guar gum and something, all these gums.
Yeah, you mentioned gums. What are the gums used for?
Maybe individually there's no great harm, but it's the amount. And also sometimes you have a processed food and it's got everything in. They've thrown everything at it to keep it on, having a long shelf life. And I think we forget that we have access to some good frozen food. That's a great way of preserving stuff. And there's no additives. So frozen peas and beans, they're frozen at source. They're fantastic. And cans of beans that we use, and we use jars of beans here in Italy. So it saves, a lot of processing. And you can try and get them without salt added, but sometimes there is. But I think we're sometimes too scared. That's the least of our problems, the salt. It's all these other additives that we need to be wary of. And bread has a lot of, stuff in it.
Yeah.
I always recommend people have sourdough and get it from a bakery. People go, it's so expensive, and the cost. What is the cost of your health?
Yeah. We don't look at the price of food when we go grocery shopping anymore because of all the things that we spend stupid money on. That's the one thing that I will say, I'll splurge on is the food.
But if you go, which I know you do, you go to the vegetable, yes, your grocery list can be very expensive, but look, it depends on what you're buying. And like I said, I bought a little thing with a sliced chicken breast in, and it was 5 times the price of what I would pay for one leg of dog. So actually, if you buy lots of vegetables in the supermarket, it's not that expensive. They can't charge that much for a leek or a potato or all those things. And I was telling some of the women, they had some chips, some French fries at a restaurant yesterday, and they were saying how amazing they were. And I said to them, and they said, are we allowed? And I think that's such an old-fashioned way of thinking, because I told them when I went inside the restaurant to check on something for them, there was a bag of potatoes on the counter that were so stuck with mud. Like, because I was thinking, oh, some poor sod's going to have to scrub all that off. That had come out of somebody's land that morning, you know? And so before you even start, that potato has got so much goodness in it.
Yeah, all the minerals and nutrients from the soil. Yeah.
Now, what about things like, because I know for North Americans, a lot of stuff is imported. So things like oranges and melons and all those things coming in on trucks that are ripening on the trucks, do they have a lot of stuff in them? Are they spraying them inside the trucks?
I believe they do, but it's also where they've been grown and have they been sprayed as they've been growing. So I think lots of people know about the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. There are, the things that you should probably always try and buy organically. So
I like to eat the clean 15 and hang out with the dirty dozen.
they're more fun. They're way more fun.
You two are in the dirty dozen, in my dirty dozen.
Yeah,
anyway, you're in mine.
So you say, okay, so if you're trying to save money, what vegetables should you be more careful? So I would say to somebody, why waste your money on an organic banana? Is that right? Because you're peeling a banana.
Yes, because it's in a skin and it probably hasn't been, it's unlikely it's been sprayed as much as, say, an apple.
Yeah, or a coconut.
And a coconut is good. Every country has its own list. You can just Google it and clean 15, dirty dozen will come up for whichever country you live in. And then try and sort of stick to it as much as possible. However, you can't be so religious to stick to it all the time because otherwise you might not eat anything. And it's still better to eat the fruit sometimes than not to eat the fruit. But you can get fantastic frozen berries. We have frozen berries here all the time because they're frozen at source.
Yeah, no sugar at all in them.
No sugar. They're organic. So look out for them in your supermarket. You don't have to buy the fresh ones all the time because they're really expensive, and especially if they're not in season. And obviously, we're trying to eat more seasonally if we can, like Italians do. They're pretty seasonal eaters. And when you go to the market, and I love it when we go to the market here because you always see some vegetable I've never seen before, and you go, what is that? And then we'll buy it, bring it back, work out a recipe for it. And do you remember, Tommy, last year? Did I cook something that looked like grass?
Yes, you did.
Was it amazing?
And it was so good. We ate grass for days. We were like cows. We loved it.
And it was from the market.
I'm going to freak Tommy out now. Freak you out as a vegan.
Oh, my God.
And you're a very strict vegan. Okay, so while we were doing this lecture this morning, one of our guests told us that she was in a very nice restaurant and she had a salad, a lot of lettuce with a little bit of protein on top or something. Anyway, she was having this salad and she said, I had no dressing on it and it tasted of fish, really tasted of fish. So it's a lettuce. She said it was like, I'm eating fish. So she asked the waitress and the waitress said, well, let me go and find out. And she said, is this, what do you call it when they grow in plastic bags? And
hydroponic.
Yeah.
Oh, hydroponic, yes.
The chef came out and said, yes, absolutely they are. And he said, the reason it tastes of fish is because, you're going to freak, Tommy.
Here it comes.
They have fish in the bags that poo in the water and look at Tommy's face, and the water, lettuce is growing in the water and there is no labeling for that.
What? That can't be right.
If you're saying you're vegan and you're eating lettuce, you may be eating fish poo.
What? That is so disgusting. Why is that allowed without labeling?
Why is that allowed? There's so much, no labeling. So I can, in an hour, when we finish this, you can go and speak to her.
And then not go to that restaurant.
Now, there's probably nothing wrong with fish poo for people who, eat fish.
I don't think even when I used to eat fish that I would knowingly eat fish poo, my friend. I still wouldn't. Do you know that plants also poo, though? It's called marmite.
Oh, I love marmite.
I always said if a plant could poop, it would be marmite.
It's natural plants.
So marmite, we have a saying in England, she's very marmite. You're either on or off. People either hate marmite or they love it. And we were brought up with it. And Jacky has toast, good bread with a little bit of butter, which is the good fat, and a little bit of marmite on, which is B12, right?
Yeah.
A lot of B12.
Yeah.
So, but is that a really processed?
It's a yeast. It's got B vitamins. I'm probably not B12 because that's only from meat, but it's B vitamins. Yeah.
Okay, so how do they turn? It's a paste that comes from probably overboiled.
Does anybody have nutritional yeast? Because nutritional yeast is what is like before Marmite, and a lot of vegans, and then they do add B12 to that, and it's a very delicious yeasty Marmitey flavor.
Cheesy flavor, but is Marmite processed?
It's got a cheesy flavor. It's vegan cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a great flavor.
Yes, it's used as a substitute for cheese or a flavor enhancer for recipes. When we cook, we use a lot of nutritional yeast. It's good for you. It's quite good for you.
But would you say, even though we know Marmite's very good and it's great for vegetarians and vegans, but is it highly processed to get it to that stage?
Yes, very good question. It is processed food. It's processed food, but it's not ultra processed food.
So it's not a UPS.
Say you take a vegetable, you say that's not processed. Maybe, especially the cheese here, the pecorino cheese, is minimally processed, and the yogurt, because they have to process it to make it into a cheese. So that's fine. That's fine because it's
of course. It would be cream if it weren't processed.
And it's got really good health values. So you can't go, oh, it's processed, I can't have that, except if you're vegan. But then what we really want to avoid is these ultra-processed foods. So I think, as grown-ups, we can sort of work out what is what. And if you really want to improve your health and your diet, is to avoid shop-bought biscuits and cakes, often have an awful lot of unwanted fats in them, because especially with biscuits, they need a shelf life. So they've got a lot of things in that we probably don't want to to consume on a regular basis.
We're going to take a quick break. Be right back. Do you remember years ago we bought a croissant on the plane and the expiry date was like 2027?
Yeah.
It was in a plastic bag and it was like...
I mean, you can't make it up. Nothing says delicious like that.
Yeah. And remember what you found in one of your kids' pocket? I don't know if I can say it.
McDonald's. I've been there. McDonald's have been there for like a year. Yeah. It wasn't rotten at all.
Yeah.
Not rotten. A bit dried up. You couldn't really eat it, but no more.
The tomato was perfect and everything was...
That is really scary, actually.
That would be ultra-processed food.
Ultra-processed food.
So that leads me into a question, Jacky, about fast food. Is there such a thing? Like, what if you are a person who's now listening to this podcast and examining their own choices and thinking to themselves, I'm one of those people who runs out and grabs packaged foods and processed foods and prepared foods because I'm very busy. I'm a single mother. I work 2 jobs. Now I feel really kind of shitty that that's how I eat and what I have to do. Are there any fast foods or alternatives that are prepared foods that are okay? Or is basically all fast food off the table?
I think you've got to do the research. I mean, obviously all the big, the famous ones that we all know about.
Yeah, I think we all know that. McDonald's, yeah.
I mean, I would look out for things like poke bowls and...
Oh, really?
Does everyone know what they are? like a little Buddha bowl. And you can get those. Mm-hmm. If there's like a soup takeaway, sometimes they could be quite nutritious. But I think if you are a super busy mom, do your meal planning at the beginning of the week and your food prep, and always cook double. A portion that you have to eat that night, you either stick it in the freezer or you can put it in a container and last 3 or 4 days.
And also people are on their own. And even when Hans and I are here by ourselves, it's very hard to cook 2 portions.
Yeah.
You might as well make a lot of it. And then we have it, so we might eat the same meal for 2 days, but I think it's in the organization, because when you're hungry and you're tired and you come in, it's so easy to just get a Thai takeaway.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, so many people do that.
Yeah, but if you have something like we were talking earlier with everybody about, one of the best things to have in your cupboard is tinned beans. Make sure it's a decent quality one, but they're ready. So yes, you should eat more beans, but then you've got to soak them and boil them and all that kind of stuff. And when you're tired at 5 o'clock, you're like, oh God, I forgot to soak the beans. But if you have a really lovely variety of chickpeas and lentils and broad beans and black beans and all the different beans, when you come in, you can just literally open a thing of beans, chop up a tomato and or have it ready and stir it in together. And that will fill you, and you won't want your sugar levels going, getting normalized. So you're not going to have that panic buying that we all do, going, oh God, I just need to order something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look on a menu in a Thai restaurant, I mean, we all know the deep fried something is going to have more calories and not be as good as the sauteed bok choy with mushrooms, So I think you can always make a decision and go for a more healthy option.
Or at least combine. Like I sometimes will do one little naughty element, but then bulk of it is good,
Yeah, because you can't not have those things sometimes. There's no choice, and we can't be. I think if you 80% of the time you eat your home cooked food, and then you've got that 20% if you get some takeout, but you just go for the healthier choices.
I always save my indulgences for situations where I know that I'm not going to have a healthy option. For instance, if I know I'm going on a trip, the week before that, I won't have a hamburger, because I know that the only food that I'm going to be able to have in the airport is going to be a vegan hamburger from a fast food place. So I try to be as responsible as possible with planning ahead and knowing when I might find myself, in the southern United States in a food desert, where there's just no options for organic, healthy farm food.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good way of planning, because I think social situations can derail your best efforts. So it's quite good to have a bit of a plan before you go out or go on a trip and work out what you're going to have.
That's such a good quote, Jackie. I'm going to steal that quote.
Yeah, or people will turn up here with lots of bars, like protein bars.
Well, they're pretty much ultra processed.
And yeah, I mean, it's like, and they think, oh no, that's fine, that's healthy. And I can't believe today that people think a protein bar is healthy.
Well, I think maybe 10 years ago, I remember we'd sling them in a bag because it was just useful. But the more I know about food and the way it's produced now, I know that's not a healthy option. And their shelf life, how long have they been sitting somewhere, and their sell-by date? They're manufactured to last for, a couple of years sometimes.
Well, that's what we were also, again, talking about olive oil here this morning. And I said, when we sell our olive oil, we pick it, press it, and send it directly to you by FedEx. But a supermarket's not going to do that. It's going to take at least, your oil, by the time it's in the supermarket, is at least a year old, or maybe 9 months, at least. But that's why the supermarkets won't put the harvest date on, because the harvest date is the day the actual olive was picked and put in a bottle, kind of thing. But they're not going to do that, because you can have olive oil for 3 years. So they're going to do an expiry date, which is actually set by governments. You're not doing any harm if it's good oil, but at the same time, you're not getting those amazing nutrients from somewhere. And if you go on holiday to anywhere where, for instance, they're making olive oil, I don't care about the country, but whether you go to Spain or France or Morocco or anywhere.
We tell everybody that once you've opened the bottle, you need to use it fairly quickly before it oxidizes, and keep it out of the sun, because that can degrade it, and the heat as well. Not have it constantly by your stove.
Oh, I just started thinking about what's near my stove. All my baking ingredients are above my stove. It's probably not good.
You move that olive oil. You don't want it to be constantly fluctuating in temperature.
Same's with fruit in the sun, because I have a bowl which looks really beautiful of lemons, and I have it in the window. And every time Jackie walks past, she pulls the bowl off the window. So it drives me insane. And she's saying, you're doing damage to those lemons. And I said, they were on a tree in the sunshine 5 minutes ago. Well, not now.
But there is quite an interesting fact that if you put mushrooms on your windowsill before you eat them, it increases their vitamin D content.
You're kidding.
So mushrooms are one of the few foods that have vitamin D in. Well, I love mushrooms because I use them a lot.
That's one of the few vitamins they say everybody should take a vitamin D, right?
100%, yes.
Oh, yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, my physician told me years ago I need to take it. And I said, I get a lot of vitamin D from the food that I eat. I'm vegan and I eat a lot of mushrooms and everything. He said, it doesn't matter. Everyone is deficient in vitamin D. It doesn't matter what you eat. Everyone should take a supplement, because nobody
has the time to sunbathe for 20 minutes a day.
I do.
And you need to have it on bare skin And we all wear
Debbie does.
sunscreen. Huh? Debbie does?
Yeah.
Debbie lives in Tuscany. She can sunbathe for 20 minutes. She can work in the sun.
But I said to my son, "Are you taking your vitamin D?" When he was living in Africa, he said, "Mom, it's probably the only place in the world, the continent of Africa, where you don't need to take it." But I think anybody else, anywhere else, even in the
Yes.
Mediterranean countries, you get days of cloud.
Yeah. Well, it's cloud, and in the winter, you're not outside at all because it's so cold. So you're not getting vitamin D in the winter.
So the idea is this UPF, ultra processed food. We have to do our ultimate to try and bring it down as much as possible.
I believe you should, because we don't know in the future how it's going to affect our health.
But how does it affect our health now? What do we know that eating fast food or eating stuff out of packets? To me, everything that comes out of a packet is processed in some way. So how do we know? I mean, people talk about inflammation. There's so much noise out there that we get so confused. We go, oh, just give up. How do we know what it's doing to us?
Well, the research is that we believe it's going to be affecting our microbiome, which is our little community of gut bacteria. And because this food has also been sitting around on a shelf, it's lost a lot of its nutrients. So you cannot be absorbing the nutrients you should be. So some of the research I've listened to or read, when people have just gone on it, they've just done like 30 days of eating ultra-processed food, and they feel dreadful at the end of it. So it's affecting your energy, you're making you more anxious, you're just not absorbing the nutrients you should be if you're eating fresh food. So in that way, you're putting on weight. I mean, it's affecting so many areas of your health. And that's just after 30 days of eating it. Not for like years and years that some people have been stuck on ultra-processed food. I mean, when people just eat convenience foods and don't cook, you're going to end up not feeling well, because this is our nourishment, it's our food. And the more nourishment we put in our bodies, I believe the better our bodies will perform. And you can't just eat, I don't know, just a little bit of salad and a little bit of chicken, to stay super skinny or thin, but you need to eat this massive variety of food. Eat the rainbow, everyone hears that and they're told to do that. But then you want to add nuts, and I love sprouting. You want to add a bit of fermented food. You want to have this incredible variety. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and all these nutrients interact with each other. And we were discussing earlier about, with the women here, about which should you supplement. And possibly, depending if you're unwell or you're definitely showing signs of deficiency. But if you supplement, you can get a little lackadaisical about eating these different foods. And instead of thinking, well, I should have some almonds today and I need some walnuts because I need vitamin E, or I need some calcium, or I need omega-3 in the walnuts. And if you just rely on supplements, you could be a bit lazy. Even the experts argue about whether you should supplement or not, because then you'll be ignoring your diet. And it's all about having all this delicious food and dreaming up in wonderful ways of presenting, preparing, and serving it. And then, if you're a good cook, people love you because, delicious plate of food and everyone praises you. So it's quite a good way.
That's very true.
Love, and everyone loves our chef here. Look at Francesco.
Yes. Well, he's very popular, and he's
got girl fans.
He wears tight t-shirts and loose pants. So it doesn't hurt.
We're lucky because while we have the retreats on, we have a chef, of course. Most people do not have. Oh my God, if I had a chef all the time, wouldn't it be great? But I think what I've seen, how Jacky has changed over the last kind of 10 years, while after you studied and then went back to university and then really took this so serious. And Jacky doesn't even do her ironing without listening to some podcast or some information. So you've become very passionate about it. And I think we're so used to this. Oh, I went on this diet, I lost 20 pounds, and I put it back on. And then, I started this, and then I'm going to be pagan diet, and then I'm going to be this diet. And, but I think what you've done is you've made it so interesting for yourself, not for other people, because you're not really a preacher, so you're an inspiration to me and everybody who comes here, because you've turned it into a kind of way of life, and you make it interesting on yourself. Like, okay, so you read about sweet potatoes, right? I'm going to have, a couple of sweet potatoes, always cooked in the fridge. So even if I'm running, I can scoop one out, have it cold on a salad or fry it up with something. You're making it a lifestyle. And that's what this is all about. And, somebody else said something after this speech this morning, which I found really heartbreaking, because we talk about eating local. And in every country, even if you're in a northern country where you have, a very short kind of spring and summer, you can get local food. There are always organic farms who desperately need your custom. But one of the things that people were really getting quite cross about today was farmers markets. One woman said that she found out there's one guy on the farmers market who does not have a farm. He goes to the wholesaler, takes off the stickers, dresses it up with some hay and some nice sparkly things. And of course, people buy it because it looks lovely. So it's often how you display stuff.
I hate that guy.
I know, but I've heard this before, that you also now have to be vigilant at farmers market. It's like what we used to do at school when we used to have to take cake and cookies, homemade, to the school ventures. So I used to go to the supermarket, undo the packets, put a few flowers in it and dress it up and say, yeah, I was baking all night. But now they're selling that because it's dirt cheap. There's no time in it, and they're making money. So again, it's just exhausting because we're being cheated day in, day out.
It is.
So you again have to be vigilant with that.
You do. I think the really good places now have websites, and you can go to as long as you can get to the farm, you can go to their farm to get your veg box, and you can even pick your own.
Yeah. But maybe that's also something, at a farmer's market, where people are coming, and I'm sure some areas, if you're in, the side of Connecticut or something, they're fabulous. But, if it was a city that brings in a farmer's market at the weekend, ask that guy.
You have to ask.
Yeah, where's your farm then? And if he kind of looks dodgy and he's like, and he's got a truck at the back with empty boxes, you've got a pretty good idea. You're getting the same stuff at twice the price from the supermarket. But again, what we preach here is to be your own warrior. And it can be overwhelming, but actually it can be very interesting. And that's why I'm saying Jacky's made it, a part of our lifestyle and made it interesting. Because if you don't enjoy it, it's like going to the gym. If you absolutely hate it, you're going to do the 2 months and then you're going to give it up. But if you find a form of fitness that you really love this, even whether it's pickleball or whether it's hiking with your dog, whatever it is, you're going to do it forever. So I think it's the same thing with this. Try and study it a little bit. Google it. All the information is there. And I also, just before we go, I wanted to, because one thing I love, because Jacky gets information from professional papers, university papers, things like that. I get my information from the Daily Mail. So I will.
And Jacky.
But I'll say things like, oh, well, I just read a big story. Eggs are back in fashion. And she goes, look who wrote it. It's the Egg Board. Now, it doesn't mean whether they're good or not, or who wrote that story, because 9 out of 10, somebody's trying to flog something. And again, when you follow somebody on Instagram, like a health guru who's, for years has got really what you think is interesting advice, next minute he's selling products. And that, to me, is I'm off. I just delete them. They're in it to sell. And it's a process, without a doubt.
I guess everyone has to make a living, but it depends how ethical it is and whether the product is good and on so many things. But you're right, we have to become our own health warriors. And because lots of the women here say, who do I follow? I don't know what to do. But there are some really well-written books out there that you can buy. Dr. William Lee has a great book, How to Eat to Be Healthy. That's backed by science. So there are some really good people to follow. And there are always people that aren't too extreme. It's like there are people that just eat, such a sort of narrow diet. And today we were talking about people that exclude so many things from their diet. But again, it's about including things. They're excluding them because they've read that they're not good for you, but they might be not good for somebody else. You need to follow somebody who makes really good sense.
Yeah, and it also makes food more interesting. So one of the things that I love to do is go to, like in London, we have some really amazing ethnic markets. So you can go to Brixton Market. So it's lots of Caribbean food. And you're walking along and you're seeing things like, what is that? I have never seen that. Well, that was so. And then you make it a little bit of a fun thing. You go and ask them, well, what do you do with this? Oh, well, you boil it. And, and you get a story out of it. You may not like it. You may say, oh, God, that was too starchy or that was too this. But it's a wonderful way of experimenting and having some fun. You don't have to be a big baker or a fine chef, but go to the Indian markets, go to the Moroccan or Italian or Portuguese or Spanish, go and see their products, Lebanese.
We were saying today, to get inspiration, because people go, oh, I don't know what to cook, what shall I make? And of course, the Mediterranean diet is one of the thought to be one of the healthiest in the world. But it's not just one thing, the Mediterranean diet, because we've got Spanish food, we've got French food, you work your way around, Spanish, French, Italian, Turkish, Croatian, Lebanese food, and then the top of Africa.
And all those shops are around every city, every big town. When people come and live in another country, they want to bring the flavors of their home. And you will always find, Tommy and I were just in Budapest, and we went to the market.
And you wanted to see the market. Debbie said, do you know where the market is? Take me to the market. And so we went.
And we went to the market. So we bought things like paprika,
We did,
saffron.
Yes. Very famous from Hungary.
I think I might have some paprika that Debbie bought me.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to using it.
But you don't have to travel all the way to Budapest. There'll be a Hungarian shop somewhere near you or online. And so I think trying to experiment.
Buy the best quality. I think with herbs and spice, buy the best quality.
I think one of the most resonant bits of takeaway for me today from you, Jacky, is that recollection of that day that we went to the market in Montepulciano and you brought back that grassy thing and you just started making things out of it. And I think if there's one thing that I would hope that our listeners will take away today, it's that experimenting with whole foods and learning to cook, as you suggested, is probably one of the most life-enhancing ways because it's so enjoyable to do. And yes, like Debbie said, you'll fail a couple of times. You'll make something, you'll say, oh my God, that was god-awful. But then many, many times you'll add something to your at-home culinary repertoire that may become, perennial favorites.
Absolutely. And we are so lucky now we have access to being able to search for recipes online, and you can trawl through them, and you can even put in like 5 ingredients you might have at the bottom of your fridge, and it'll come up with a recipe that includes more. So I make, I call it fridge soup or fridge pasta. You have to use your imagination. But Toby, you summed it up well. That was good.
On that last note, so if you put the attention into this, then you can have, right? Doesn't mean you can never have, something from the supermarket, or you can never have a takeout food. But you've got to steer it to the other way, right? You've got to say, okay, so the bulk of everything I'm having is as healthy as possible. And then if I want a plate of French fries, I can have them.
Yeah, well, Debbie and I both love French fries, so
Oh my God, who doesn't? And I think that's the message. It's not be perfect, it's just be better. None of us are cheating.
To strive for perfection will give you anxiety. We don't want that. So
also bad for your health.
Yeah, and if you have anxiety, then you turn to the things that maybe make you feel a bit better, which are actually the things that, you don't have anxiety saying, oh, I'm going to have a piece of sliced apple. I'll have a piece of cake,
Well, okay. So now that we've had this wonderful discussion, I have something to say to each of you in closing. Jacky, thank you so much for this. And Debbie, may I come down the hill for a glass of rosé now?
Oh.
So goodbye, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Jacky.
Goodbye.
Love you so much. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Great to see you both.
If you're enjoying this podcast, please rate us, send in a review, and make sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Sarah Burke, and I host the Women in Media podcast, where I'm exploring the challenges women face in the media spotlight and celebrating our triumphs. My guests come from radio, TV, news, and sports, and we'll cover topics like leadership, diversity, stereotypes, and more. Most of all, I'm looking to build a community through a space where we can discuss anything. The Women in Media podcast, Available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or at womeninmedia.ca. This podcast is distributed by the Women in Media Podcast Network. Find out more at womeninmedia.network.